How about Shemel Shah? Barakatah Yahweh Shah. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee.
Because all the blessings that we're going to get, which is entailing the kingdom of heaven. Isaiah the 60th chapter, I'm going to start at the 10th verse and read on down. It says, and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. So the sons of strangers, that's talking about the actual strangers, the other nations, shall build up thy walls. We're going to have them in slavery. So they're going to be building the kingdom of heaven, because we're not building nothing. It says, for in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually, they shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles. That's talking about the actual Gentiles. We're going to take all of their substance, and that their kings may be brought.
And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee.
Barakatah Yahweh Shah. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish, yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. Verse 13. And the glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, the box together to beautify the place of my sanctuary, and I will make the place of my feet glorious. So the land of Israel, the land of Jerusalem, is going to be made glorious. It's going to be made glorious once again. The kingdom is going to be built up. We had a taste of that during the time of Solomon's reign, which was for about 40 years. Verse 14, the sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet. And they shall call thee the city of the Lord. The word Zion means monument, the monument of the Holy One of Israel. Whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, so that no man went through thee, I will make thee an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations. Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shall suck the breasts of kings, meaning we're going to take all their substance. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord thy power, the Lord and thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. For brass I will bring thee gold, and for iron I will bring thee silver, and for wood brass, and for stones iron. And I will make thy officers peace, and thine exactors righteousness. Violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation, and thy gates praise. The sun shall no more thy light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto thee, but the Lord shall be unto thee an everlasting light, and the power thy glory. The sun shall no more go down, meaning our kingdom is not going to go down. In other words, once we get back in power, we're going to be in power forever. The sun is never going to go down on our kingdom again. The sun is never going to set on our kingdom. We're going to always shine, and we're going to always be in that glory once we get into the kingdom of heaven. There's no more going back into slavery under the other nations. Esau's not going to rise back up and put us in captivity. Ham, Japheth, Ishmael, none of the other nations are going to rise up and take us down ever again. When we get on top this time, we're going to remain on top. Neither shall thy moon withdraw itself, for the Lord shall be thine everlasting light, and the days of thy mourning shall be ended. So no more mourning, no more crying, no more vexation of spirit, no more weeping, no more hopelessness because of the condition that we're in as Israelites right now. Verse 21, thy people also shall be all righteous, they shall inherit the land forever. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. Verse 22, a little one shall become 1,000. This is in the kingdom. So what is this talking about? We're going to have sex. Again, like I said, The 2/3 that are going to pass in this destruction, the 2/3 are going to come back through the 1/3 that make it. The Lord said, 2/3 shall be cut off and die, and the third will I bring through the fire. It says, a little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, the Lord, will hasten it in his time.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashem Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Shai. All right, so going into this morning news and prophecy. Okay, this war will cause food shortages, man. Okay, and it's a beautiful thing how our power, Yahweh Bashem Shai, has these things playing out, because as the devil, he has started the war, Esau, Edom, okay, the elites, have thrown America into this war, all right, and this is the war that's going to end all wars, okay, and through this war, it's going to activate all the other prophecies, okay, needed to close this thing out, okay, because we know is that right now the big thing is the energy crisis, okay, and energy crisis are going to turn into food crisis, and food crisis, okay, turn into civil unrest, okay, Egyptian against Egyptian on a whole nother level, okay, Second Ezra 15, all right, your martial law, okay, and eventually the implementation, okay, the mandate of the MOTB, okay, so this war, all right, that the Lord, all right, has caused the elites, okay, to kickstart by sicking America on Iran. Well, this is the war that's going to end all wars, and also is going to activate all these other prophecies, okay, that's needed to close this thing out, man. So it's a beautiful thing, all right, how the Lord got this thing playing out, especially the times that we're in, as we're going into the time of Passover, okay, and the Lord has caused major prophecy to come to pass, okay, because we're getting close to that second Exodus, man. That second Exodus in which the Lord is going to deliver his people from spiritual Egypt, which is here in America, man. Okay, it's going to be great destruction, okay, of this spiritual Egypt, okay, and the great deliverance as well. Okay, so the stage is being set for a second Exodus, man. Okay, and what we're getting ready to see is the ripple effects of this war and how war and famine are tied together when you go into the scriptures. We'll get these things. So when you go, let's go here. Let's go here to the book of Jeremiah. All right, so you go to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 28, and verse 8. It said, the prophets that had been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries, against great kingdoms of war, and of evil and of pestilence. Okay, so war, all right, the prophets of old talked about war. They prophesied about war. Jeremiah, he was speaking of war, how the Babylonians, all right, the Neo-Babylonian Empire will conquer, okay, this will become a world superpower and conquer these other heathens. Okay, that was happening during the time of Jeremiah. Okay, during the time of Isaiah, you had the Assyrians, okay, on the come up. Okay, and the wars that they will wage. all right, and eventually take down the northern tribes. Okay, so the prophets of old, they got into, they got into the events, concerning war, evil, all right, and part of evil, because evil goes into bad time. Well, famine is a bad time. It's going to be part of the evils in these last days is great famine, which is all throughout the scriptures. But war and evil and pestilence, which is diseases, there's still a thing. Let's see, right now, as people are concerned about the war, the gas prices, well, the least of your concern coming is going to be gas prices, man. See, these things are just going to get worse and worse. The gas price is going to be the least of your concern, man, as this thing gets more and more evil. So the Lord has started, an algorithm, all right, to bring about evils and pestilence and war. And he has had his prophets to speak on these things before they manifested, man. He had his prophets, commentate through the spirit, dealing with the buildup to the war, evil, and pestilence, man. So let's go here. Even when you go into the book of Matthew, let's go here, the book of Matthew, chapter 24 and 6. It says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." So we've been hearing rumors of wars, and now, all right, there's actual war. But there was rumors leading up to this war, for a long time. That's why Iran has even been preparing for war for decades. All right, because there was always a threat of an American war. All right, of an American attack on Iran. You see, so Iran has been preparing for decades. There was always these looming, possibilities, of a direct war between America and Iran. And there was just a rumor that's been circulating, and now they're in that war. Well, there's still things that have to play out, before the ultimate judgment, which is the nukes, all right, and the chariots, man. Yahweh Shah. Verse 7 said, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines." You see that? So you see how war and famines and pestilence, they're all right here together. Because famine creates diseases as well. It says in earthquakes in diverse places. All right. So we're seeing all these things happening. We're seeing the uptick on earthquake. We heard these rumors of wars. Now they're in the actual war. And now what we're going to see is this energy crisis turn into a food crisis, which is going to be a famine. So let's go here real quick. Does mass famine cause let's go here real quick. Show you how war, famine, and diseases, they all run together. So when you go here, I looked it up real quick. All right. So I said, does mass famine cause disease? It says yes. Mass famine causes disease by drastically weakening immune systems and increasing susceptibility to infections, often resulting in higher mortality from diseases like diarrhea, all right, and the cholera, all right, then it says in cholera, than from starvation itself. So you can die of diseases during the famine before you even die of the starvation. So you see how famine and pestilence are linked together, and war, because war stops traffic. War stops trade. When you get into an actual war, trade stops. Okay, shipping stops. Things, it's not business as usual when you get into actual wars. Okay, and the way the Lord had this war, okay, begin in this region, okay, at this critical choke point at the Strait of Hormuz, okay, it's going to lead to these things being fulfilled. Okay, now in the midst of this, the elites are trying to establish their new world order. Okay, so in their mind, they want to collapse. They want tribulation and the collapse. Okay, because they want to depopulate and also create desperation. Okay, so they can have leverage for this new world order they present. Okay, the CHIP, okay, is a fix all. Okay, so everything is playing, all right, everything is going exactly according to the plan. Okay, a prophecy, man. Prophecy is right on schedule. Okay, and these elites, you know, is they're trying to, is they want to manipulate this situation for their new world order, or that's going to fail too. Okay, because their last move is to try to mandate this new world order. Okay, it's a transition from this old world to a new world. You know, which we get into that too. I got a video dealing with that. But it says it also leads to long-term chronic conditions such as diabetes and cognitive impairment, while causing immediate severe malnutrition, man. Okay, so famine itself causes pestilence, man, and this eases. Okay, plus no telling what the devil's going to release. Okay, or the Lord might just, you know, release something off the hip. Okay, the Most High might just release something off the hip, man. All right, that can be fatal. You see, there's a lot of possibilities in these days of judgment, man. Okay, so let's go from here. So let's get this. All right, the book of Lamentations, chapter 4. Okay, this is the book of Lamentations. All right, chapter 4. And in verse 9, it says, they that be slain with the sword are better than they that be slain with hunger. For these pine away, stricken through for want of the fruits of the field. Okay, that's a very excruciating death. Okay, and you can imagine how long days feel when you're starving. Okay, when you're stricken with famine, when your organs are shutting down. Okay, when you're too weak to move, but you can feel all the pain that comes with starvation. That's gonna be that's gonna be a terrible death, man, and that's gonna be the way of many. Okay, according to the scriptures, you see, and this war is gonna play a part. Okay, in expediting. Okay, famine conditions in the earth. Okay, because as this thing escalates, because critical infrastructure is being destroyed. You see, there's critical infrastructure. All right, not only the strait being closed, but you have oil reserves. Okay, and then the oil refineries. Okay, that's beginning to be targeted, man. So even if the strait is open, well, once you destroy refineries, okay, those things don't come back. Okay, and you can announce, okay, a destroy refinery. Okay, so you right now they can make an announcement and the strait will be open. Iran can make the announcement and the strait will be open for business, and you know it'll take a few weeks and it still have an impact. Okay, but see, once you get to destroying the infrastructure, the refinery, all right, those refiners of this oil, then you can't announce that back open. Okay, that's a automatic crisis, man. Okay, so let's go from there. I want to play this first video. We all got two videos. Okay, let's play this one first. Let's play this one.
The Iran war is apparently jeopardizing the global food supply. Now, you might be wondering, how is that even possible? Well, it's possible because much of the fertilizer that region of the world. And right now, the Strait of Hormuz is not really available for shipping fertilizer to various parts of the globe. Now, this is a little talked about consequence of this war against Iran. And this conflict is going to drive up the price of all sorts of chemicals, including fertilizers like urea, nitrogen, and ammonia. Now, these chemicals are critical for food production, and much of it is in fact produced in the Gulf region. So, 5 primary fertilizer exporters, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE and Bahrain, rely heavily on the Strait of Hormuz to export their wares. And as we've learned, the Strait of Hormuz has been effectively shut down by the Iranians in retaliation for the US-Israeli attacks against them. Making matters worse, the United States stupidly went into this war right before the spring planting season. So how bad is this? Well, according to the New York Times reporting, and they tend to, provide cover for these types of conflicts, but even they had to admit, collectively, these countries supply more than 1/3 of the world's trade in urea, the dominant form of nitrogen fertilizer, as well as nearly 1/4 of another type, ammonia. According to data that was compiled by the International Fertilizer Association, the same 5 countries produce nearly 1/5 of phosphate fertilizers. So one major source of urea, Energy, halted production this past week when it lost access to natural gas after strikes from Iranian drones and missiles.
What's the latest trend in hiring? Skills-based hiring, which actually emphasizes skills-based hiring. ZipRecruiter recommends Smart free at ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. ZipRecruiter has discover qualified candidates, quick job posts, so you can the #1 rated hiring site based on G2. Let ZipRecruiter help you find ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
But look, for the most part, believe it or not, factories are still producing fertilizer. It's just that the Strait of Hormuz, way more important than people suspected, I guess. So they're unable to transport the fertilizer. So yeah, production has been harmed a little bit, but the bigger issue is transporting the fertilizer. And they're having trouble shipping it. And we don't know how long this disastrous war is going to go on. So the longer it goes on, the bigger problem this becomes. So this does threaten the global food supply. And while wealthier countries will likely just pay a lot more for their food, meaning us, the United States, we will likely see even more inflation when we go to the grocery store. The real victims of all this are the poor and developing countries that stand to go hungry as a result of this. And so we should also note that Trump did position the United States in a uniquely terrible position as this fertilizer shock hits the markets. Trump's tariffs had already raised the cost of imported fertilizer, forcing many farmers to hold off stocking up. The White House exempted fertilizers from its latest tariffs last month, but millions of tons of urea cannot quickly be summoned from points around the globe. So what are the experts saying about all of this? Well, why don't we go to Chris Lawson? He's the vice president of market intelligence and prices at the London-based commodities research firm known as CRU. He told the New York Times, quote, "It's bad. There's no other way of putting it. The world is highly reliant on fertilizer and associated raw materials supplied out of that region, meaning the Gulf." Jan William Earsman, has a similar take. She's a chemical engineer and fertilizer expert at the Leiden University in the Netherlands. She concedes that the price of food will go up. So my fellow Americans, what do you think? Maybe it's just a small price to pay for a foreign country to hit its goals so they can expand their borders, annex land, and continue terrorizing the Middle East. Congratulations.
And she talking about the small hats. Okay. So yeah, you have this situation dealing with the fertilizer. All right. Then the timing of it in the spring. Okay, where these farmers, begin planting, planting season really is this month, and these things were done. Okay, ultimately the Lord planned these things out. Okay, and He puts it on the mind of the elites. Okay, to try to achieve their new world order. Okay, through their craftiness. Okay, because one of the things that they want to do is depopulate and create civil unrest. Okay, they want to purge like atmosphere, man. Okay, and because what's that in second Esdras? Let's get there real quick. Let's go to second Esdras 15. Okay, so it's gonna be a ripple effect, man. And plus America depends on what? See, America, 90% of the people depend on over 90% of the people depend on trucking, okay, for their food. That means that the trucks have to run. Okay, well, if there's no crops, if there's no harvest, okay, well, there's nothing to put on the trucks. Okay, and the gas prices, all right, start to hyperinflate. Okay, well, the cost of trucking, okay, well, a lot of these businesses, especially smaller companies, okay, they can't operate. Okay, in America, all right, over 90% of its population depends on their trucking, okay, for their daily food. Okay, most people's access to food, okay, is through what? These stores. Okay, so this devil, all right, he wants to cause a major disruption. Okay, he wants to cause a major disruption, and he's gonna allow it to get to a certain point. And he's going to step in with a fix-all, which is going to be the sea hip. This is going to solve the famine. It's going to solve the violence. It's going to solve the unrest, this technology. Okay, we figured it out. Okay, and he's going to do this in the midst of this war going on. Okay, because remember, these devils want to depopulate. They're going to use this war itself, sending people, deploying troops, okay, to the slaughter. Okay. So these devils, they got their schemes working, but it's all playing in the favor of the elect, because we need these prophecies to come to pass, okay, before we're delivered. Before Yahushua can come, these things must happen, man. Okay, the time of tribulation, Jacob's trouble, okay, famines, and then also famines create the atmosphere for the Lord to do miracles, man. Okay, now to remember, our power is getting ready to do miracles in these times. Okay, so let's go here, 2 Esdras 6:22, and it says, "And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown; the full storehouses shall suddenly be empty." Man, it says suddenly. It's gonna come a time where them shelves going to empty out, and they're not going to be restocked. We've seen shelves get low before, but eventually they get restocked. Man, it's gonna come a time when these shelves, okay, go low, okay, and not be restocked, man. And people's access to food is going to be cut off, which is going to create scarcity, man. Okay, which is going to create civil unrest. Okay, so all these things are happening while the war is going on. Okay, all these are a part of the war. It's all intertwined. That's why the scriptures mention it all together. All throughout the scriptures, it mentions war, famine, pestilence. It mentions these things all together. Okay, you go here, 2 Esdras 15, and we'll jump around. It said, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord." So the Lord has, okay, put the spirit on his men to speak his word, to break down his word, to break down his prophecies, man. Okay? To make sense of the prophecies of the scriptures, man, of the things that's to come. Okay? So that's why prophecy is at the forefront, because prophecy is, understanding prophecy is vital, man. You know, and that's why the beginning with Elder Apostles Tahar, okay, the rest of the elder apostles, okay, they push heavy what? Prophecy, man. Tap into prophecy, man, because that's vital to understand prophecy, man. Okay? You see, these people that's been playing Israelites and know that they're Israelites and been playing when it comes to prophecy, okay, you made, you know, the cookout, the main thing, you know, the cookout, the hanging out, the, you know, the Passover garment, you know, 2024 pass. See, you made that the main thing, and you really haven't tapped into prophecy, man. Okay? A lot of Israelites going to be caught unaware, man. They're not rooted for the things to come. They're not rooted for the time to come. Okay? Well, the Lord has put heavy emphasis on prophecy in these latter days, man. Okay? Because we're coming to the worst time ever, man. Knowledge and wisdom should be the stability of our time. Well, knowledge and wisdom of what? Of these prophecies, man. See, we understand what these things mean, and these things are necessary. And we understand that in the midst of this, our power promise that we will be good, that we have provisions in these times, man. Okay? The Lord promised us security in these times. Okay? So it says, and call them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. Fear not the imagination against thee, least let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness, man. You know, and it's a faith booster for us to see the words of the Lord manifest real time, happen real time. Okay? These different alliances in this war, okay, different events and circumstances that the Bible warned us about, man. Okay? And the Lord has had his men sounding the alarm for decades now, man. Okay? Going into these things week in and week out, and now day in and day out, man. Now hour on the hour. Okay? As these things get closer, the Lord has turned up the volume of the prophets, man. Okay? But it's only for the elect. So when you go here, said, behold, said the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, which is war, and ultimate, the climax of the war is going to be the ultimate sword, which are the nukes. Okay? The sword, all right, then you have civil unrest, a lot of gun violence finna erupt in America, man. Why? Because of these shortages, man. Okay? It said the sword, famine, death, and destruction. You see how it's always together? Okay, the sword, famine, death, and destruction, man. Famine is always in the mix, man. Okay? Because of this war is going to create scarcity. You see? And the scarcity is going to create unrest and all right? Because of famine. You see, he said, for wickedness have exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. And see, this is the judgment of a wicked society. You know, matter of fact, real quick, I'm going to go back to 2nd Esdras 15, Baratazah. I believe that's in the book of Tobit. All right, this is the judgment of a wicked society, man. Starvation, all right, extreme violence, okay, war. You see, this pestilence, okay, teeth of wild beast in the mix, okay, but this is the Lord judging a wicked society, man. Okay, there's a great rebellion in the earth against Yahweh by Shemal Shah, and he's finna address that, man. Okay, with judgment. So let's go. Let's see. Yep. This is the book of Tobit, chapter 4, verse 13. It says, now therefore, my son, love thy brethren, and despise not in thy heart thy brethren, the sons and daughters of thy people, and not taking a wife of them, For in pride is a it's therefore in pride is destruction and much trouble, and in lewdness is decay and great want. For lewdness is the mother of famine. Okay, this is the results of a wicked society: famine, decay, destruction, and much trouble. Okay, this is a proud, lewd society, man. Okay, which it mirrors the proud rule. All right, the proud and lewd rulership of this society, man. Okay, this man has turned the majority of the earth into Epstein Island, man. You know, it gets worse and more lewd the higher you get. Okay, but the average person is proud and they have lewdness to them, man. Okay, it said for lewdness is the mother of famine. Okay, so lewdness produce. Okay, because the mother is something where you produce it. It comes from you. Okay, so lewdness is the mother, or it produces famine. And this is a very lewd society, man. Okay, so you go here. Let's go back to 2nd Ezra 15. Yeah, watch that shit. Let's go here, 2nd Ezra 15. And we'll jump down. Okay. Because what's going to be the main reason, okay, for the civil unrest? Well, let's jump down. Okay. This is 2nd Ezra 15 and 16. It said, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their action shall not stand. All right, and the course of their action shall stand in their power, man. People are just going to lose it and take matters into their own hand. All right, because it's going to be a starving population. See, America is used to so much abundance and having so much excess and everything. Okay, you know, America wastes, you know, almost 40% of his food supply. Okay, of his food production. Okay, we always go into it on how much. Let's see. All right, so you go here real quick. You see, it goes into, you know, they live carelessly, without care. Is America, man. Okay, because America has been used to so much excess in everything, man. Now you come to America, get all the drugs you want, all the liquor you want, all the food you want, all the sex you can afford. Okay, you can just come and parlay. That's why everyone chases the dollar, because the dollar gives you so much. It gives you access to, okay, the heart's desire, the flesh desire, man. Okay, so I asked how much food waste in America. Approximately 30 to 40% of the U.S. food supply is wasted, amounting to nearly 60 to 66 million tons, or over 130 billion pounds of food discarded annually. This waste, valued at over 161 billion, 218 billion annually, accounts for the largest component of landfills, okay, with average households losing roughly 1,500 to 2,900 plus on uneaten food. This is crazy, man. Okay, but America has been a place of abundance. Okay, that's the perk of having the world reserve currency. Okay, it creates abundance. All right, and then when you have a currency, a fiat currency that's not attached, okay, to an actual resource, okay, it creates artificial abundance, man. Okay, it creates value out of thin air. You see, and America has, been pampered and spoiled by that abundance, man. That's why when the times of scarcity, man, these people are going to lose it. Okay, and the people that survive the chaos, all right, they're going to take the sea hill, because they're going to want to get back to this. Okay, they want to get back to abundance, living carelessly, man. Okay, and he's going to present that sea hill as a utopia. Okay, in the midst of this war, in the midst of these calamities, and people gonna be deployed, and it's gonna be a lot going on at the same time. It's gonna be a lot going on at the same time, man. Things are getting ready to move quick, and that's why His word got to be in us, man. You see, this is why the Lord been spending this time, all right, just instilling us with trusting, okay, with having faith, with understanding, okay. So we should know the script. Is getting to the point. We should know the script by heart, the things that's supposed to happen according to prophecy, man. Okay, but America is used to that abundance, man. You see, and when that abundance, okay, is snatched away, okay, these people are going to go into outrage, man. You see, and they're going to start, all right, first deleting one another. Okay. It says, a man shall desire to go into the city and shall not be able. Okay, then you also have the false flags looming. They already telegraphed that, which can start to bring in more of a police state. Okay, they already showed you, they already got people used to, all right, federal law enforcement on ICE. Okay, but what's coming is going to be on another level. You see, with this martial law. It said, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. Showing you how bad it's going to be, man. Okay, it's going to be scary outside, man. Okay, because it's going to be very primitive. Okay, it's going to be straight survival mode. Okay, but their pride, and this is part of the Lord breaking their pride as well. Especially in America, there's no people on earth that's more proud than you American people, man. Okay, but that's going to be destroyed. It said, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. Okay, so the driving force behind, people not having pity upon his neighbor, okay, and begin spoiling one another, destroying one another with the sword, all right, which is the modern day gun in this context, okay, it's because of lack of bread, lack of resources, man. And this is what the elites want, because they want depopulation. But above what the elites want, the Lord wants judgment to go forth. Okay, and He's finna use a lot of you proud Americans to judge each other, man. Okay, while the war, is escalating to going nuclear, man. All this is going to be happening while the war is escalating, man. Okay, so we're coming into some chaotic times. You see, and every day, that their straightest clothes is doing damage on the back end, man. Okay, there's going to be catastrophic, man. Okay, so let's go from there. Got another video I want to get into, because in the midst of this, these elites, okay, they want to usher in, okay, this new system, this new digital system, and they want to, and see, these elites, they want to crash all currency, okay, and then this war was always started to crash currency. Now that things are going, okay, not exactly according to plan, okay, you devils have to pivot to where now they want to use the yuan to destroy the dollar. Okay, because now they're saying that in order to get, okay, your shipping, all right, for these nations to get their shipments of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and any shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, where they have to pay in the Chinese yuan. Okay, and if they start, we start to see these nations paying for these shipments, okay, in the yuan. All right, that's gonna decrease the demand for the dollar. Okay, which that's gonna create inflation, man. Potentially hyperinflation. Okay, so right now it's just a proposition. But even with these nations not moving anything, it's still going to lead to an energy crisis, which is going to be a food crisis. Okay, and it's still going to have an effect on inflation. Okay, but if these nations start to uh, uh, buy oil in yuan, which the yuan is not going to replace the dollar, okay, but it's a tool being used to crash the dollar because the elites need economic collapse, a global economic collapse, to bring in this the digital system fully. Okay, so there's a lot, happening, a lot of things being manipulated, okay, by the elites, okay, to bring in this new world order, but they have to do it because we need them to mandate that MOBT. Okay, so let's play this and we'll jump around this interview a little bit. She's going to go into it.
We have our special guest with us. Catherine Austin Fitts is back to the show. She's an American investment banker who served as managing director of Dillon Read and Company and as United States Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development for Housing in George W. Herbert Walker Bush's administration. She's also co-authored a report in 2017 alleging $21 trillion in unauthorized spending by the United States Department of Defense and U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development over a 17-year period. Welcome back to the show, Catherine Austin Fitts. Good to see you.
Jimmy, it's good to see you.
So now, we were just talking briefly before we started about how I'm feeling anxious about the war, and you said that an infection has to bubble up to the surface. Is that how you described it?
Yeah, so I think we have a problem, and our problem is a secret governance system, and that secret governance system is centralizing control into a control grid that will end the democratic republic way of government that we in the United States have enjoyed, will shred the Constitution, and they continue to do things that consolidate power, and war is one of them. And I think that problem is going to keep getting worse and worse and worse until they fail or we change it.
So and
she said something about how, because we saying the secret governance, you talking about the elites, and how they utilize war to consolidate power. Okay, and we know, all right, they want to consolidate, okay, power to a technocracy. Okay, because in their mind, they're going to manage this war. Okay, and as these nations pummel each other, all right, they're going to be able to consolidate power, more power to themselves. Okay, and that's why you have this Greater Israel Project. Okay, because they want to, all right, move, all right, the centralized power, okay, to the state of Israel. Okay, and these people like Netanyahu, they're just characters. Okay, tasked with being on the front line, doing the groundwork of getting these things done. Trump, okay, they're just characters, all right, that's put on the ground to do the groundwork to get these things done. Okay, do what needs to be done on the ground while the elites are in the background manipulating the markets, manipulating events. Okay, to bring about, okay, more war. Okay, because they want to consolidate more power to themselves. They want to take away the power from the nation states. So in their mind, this war is going to weaken all the nation states. Okay, and they go unscathed. All right, and they come, okay, and set a technocracy on top of the ashes of this third world war. Okay, merge everyone with technology, man. Okay, so these devils, these elites, in their mind, they're going to use, okay, this war is a global crisis to create global desperation, all right, to weaken these nations, to weaken these governments, okay, and they step in and establish a technocracy, okay. See, their post-war ambitions is a technocracy running the earth, okay, but that's going to collide with the prophecy of Yahweh Bashim al-Shah, of the Heavenly Father, okay, setting Yahweh Shah up as the King of Kings. See, this is where, all right, the elites collide with the will of the Heavenly Father, okay, is this post-World War III ambition of the elites, thinking that they're going to establish a technocracy. Well, no, the scriptures say the Lord, okay, the Heavenly Father is going to establish his son as King of Kings and Lord of Lords after this World War. Okay, which we'll get in a minute, but let this play. You know, she's gonna go into some things.
The problem, you mean, of secret governance control over us? That problem?
Well, it's both secret governance system. So let me go back. So the fundamental bureaucracy, or the key bureaucracy to that control system, is the central banking system. And the model we've used in the West is called the central banking warfare system. So the central banks print money and the military make sure they take it. And every 80 to 120 years, that system does a reset, which is a monumental change. It's a complete, and in fact, it's a change in which plague laws traditionally have been part of what they do to centralize control of labor and capital and, do their reset. Oftentimes you switch the reserve currency when that happens. And we are in the middle of a reset. And it's a gut-wrenching one because you're talking about unbelievably fundamental changes to the central bank warfare model. They're looking to use digital technology to go to a whole new model that sort of ends currency and goes to a technocratic control grid. That's a once every 500 years event. That's huge. So if you're feeling like you're being rocked and rolled, that's why. It's the reinvention of everything.
So you're saying this reset, when was the last reset?
It was basically the Spanish flu, and after World War I, they did a reset. And essentially, if you go back, the reserve currency was the sterling. And then the US created the Federal Reserve that gave them the ability to then do, between World War I and World War II, a duopoly between sterling and the dollar. And then World War II, it went all to the dollar. And so the last reset basically moved from sterling to the duopoly with the dollar and sterling after World War I.
Oh, okay. And
But real quick, let's just go into what she's speaking of with this sterling, all right, which was the British pound. Okay, so when you go into this sterling, because see, it's a reset. All right, these devils are attempting to reset. Okay, now when you go into, I asked how long was sterling the world currency, because that was the world currency before the dollar. Okay, but they reset, okay, the currencies in World War I, World War II. Okay, in World War II, it completely transitioned to the dollar. Okay, because after World War I, you had the sterling and the dollar pretty much neck and neck. But after World War II, okay, the U.S. dollar, okay, had the edge on the sterling. Okay, because British were so war torn, and that's why these nations, really they're trying to they for the longest they've been trying to avoid war, because they know, if you get caught up in the war, that sets you back decades. You get caught in the war, it'll set you back decades, man. And these nations, they want to go into, okay, this new world order with strength. Okay. You see, but the elites, they want these nations to pummel each other. Okay, to so everybody can be back. All right, and they can bring in this new system. okay, and subjugate, all right, the earth, okay, to subjugate the nations of the earth. You see, it said the pound sterling was the world's dominant international currency for approximately 100 to 150 years, reaching its zenith during the 19th century and early 20th century, before being overtaken by the US dollar in the 1920s. Salaki, while its existence for over 1,200 years, its global dominance lasted from the peak of the British Industrial Empire until the interwar, all right, years, speaking of those first two wars. Okay. So you had this, you go here, because this was the last reset. The last great reset was a shift from, all right, the sterling pound, the British pound, to the American dollar. It said the shift to the USD, while commonly thought to have lasted until World War II, recent studies show the US dollar actually overtook the sterling as the leading reserve and financing currency in the mid 1920s. Okay, so after World War II, they just made it official. Okay, what you call the Bretton Woods Agreement. Okay, the Bretton Woods Agreements. I believe it's out there in Connecticut. Okay, with that agreement, all right, it locked in the US dollar as a world reserve currency, and they did that before the war was over. You know, I think they did that even before the war was over. They made that because they seen that the West was going to win. Okay, the Western nation, the Western allies were going to win. All right, let me see. Was the Bretton Woods, all right, meeting during, let's see. Okay, see, yep. So the Bretton Woods meeting took place during World War II. So even before the war was over. Okay, formerly known as the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference, it was held from July 1st, all right, to July 22nd, 1944, more than a year, okay, before the war officially ended. So in the midst of war, we're going to see moves being made. It's not, you know, MOT going to be, all right, mandatory, then the war starts. No, these moves are going to be made in the war because it's conventional. You can have conventional war for years. Okay, I know you look at the bombs going off and you like, damn, they can't. See, this shit gonna be over in a month. Nah, they can do that for years. Okay, go back and forth with these conventional missiles for years. Okay, so in the midst of this war, you're gonna have certain moves being made to bring about this MOTB. Okay, and while the war is going on. Okay, so we're in the Third World War. You see, and in the midst of this Third World War, there's going to be moves being made by these devils to manipulate what's going on. Okay, to bring about this new world order. Okay, so let's go. Let's go back to the video.
And that was, but the creation of the Fed was before World War I, right? Correct?
Right. Before you can have reserve or currency responsibility, whether it's as sharing it with the sterling or sharing it with or being your own reserve currency, you need certain infrastructure to manage those positions and interaction with other parties around the world. And that was one of the reasons they wanted to put the Fed in operation. But at the same time they brought in the Fed, they did all sorts of things to back up that system, including creating the IRS and implementing all sorts of federal taxation. And I would say they also brought in the drugs and significantly increased drug trafficking in the United States to build the enforcement mechanisms that they also needed. So that, there was a series of different things that happened at the same time they did the Fed, which reorganizes institutions to help to continue to centralize control of power.
Hello. My name is Adam Ferrari, and I'm the CEO of Energy. I look forward to you joining us at our next webinar where you can drill deeper into our bond offering. We currently offer 2 investment opportunities.
And so right now there's a reset happening that is as big as that?
I would say bigger.
Really?
And I would, yeah, because moving the reserve currency from the sterling to a duopoly between the U.S. and sterling, that's a change within the model. Digital technology is fundamentally changing how the financial transactions are done and ends currency. In other words, we went from one reserve currency to 2 kinds of reserve currencies and then to a third, US dollar standalone, but all of those were currencies. Now what they're trying to do is implement a control grid where you get rid of currencies and you just have, the combination of programmable money with rule systems that give total central control. So the head of the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank of central bank, said in 2020, the beauty of the system is we can set the rules centrally and we have the technology to enforce them. Now, he said it with respect to central bank digital currencies, but if you look at the legislation that the US has passed and is passing, they are passing legislation to allow them to do CBDCs privately through stablecoins and digital assets and implement the same control systems. And so, there's been states and now the Congress is moving to outlaw central bank digital currencies. But if you look at what they're proposing to do, they're just saying instead of the central bank issuing programmable money that will be used to control you, we will have the banks that own the central bank issue, quote unquote, private money that has the same rule system that can control you. And I'm talking to you today from Tennessee. I've been in the States for the last.
So this reset is going to introduce the world to digital currency, okay, which is a control system. Okay, it gives central control directly to the elites. Okay, because right now, with all these different currencies, there's a lot they have to do to manipulate the markets and do this and do that. So they want to simplify their control over the population, okay, by implementing digital currency. Okay, and this is the elites want to, create their own birthright. So they got the Greater Israel Project going on, okay, where they want to extend the borders of Israel, okay, and that's why they hoping, because their hopes was that America was going to weaken, Iran drastically, okay, but since that's not happening, now they're having to use the momentum, okay, with Iran, all right, and now they want to manipulate, okay, the currencies and use the yuan to crash the dollar. Okay, but overall, this devil, okay, he wants a Greater Israel Project. Okay, he wants to reward himself with the land promised to us. All right, and he wants to replace currencies with a control system. All right, that's ran off digital money. So he needs to collapse all currencies, man. Okay. So this is what the devil is on. Now I want to jump up. I'm gonna jump around a little bit in this interview. She speaks on something else.
And what do you think the effect is or how does this relate to the Iran war?
Okay, so We receive enormous subsidy from all around the world because we're the reserve currency. Okay. So when people say, our way of life is supported by that, literally, you'll see estimates of people saying if we lost the reserve currency status, the value of the US dollar against global currencies around the world would drop by as much as 50 to 90%. One of the reasons you're feeling inflation is because the value of the dollar and all fiat currencies is going down. So we've been losing or we've been de-dollarizing. So we still are the reserve currency and we still have an enormous market share of global reserves as well as, being the dominant currency used for trade. And there's no currency in the world that comes close to our market share. So if somebody said, I want to leave the dollar tomorrow, part of the problem is they don't have a place to go. And people in the markets will say the dollar is both dangerous and dominant. Okay. However, that position of reserve currency depends enormously on maintaining a global military presence that is effective. If you lose that, so for example, if the Straits of Hormuz close and you can't open them and you make it clear to the world that you don't control the sea lanes, then all bets are off and things are going to change. So we have seen a steady de-dollarization of other countries not wanting to buy treasuries and now getting out of treasuries. Now, the U.S. response has been to propose to do global stablecoins. Now that institutions won't buy our paper, we're hoping to get retail people all around the world out of their local currency and into treasury through stablecoins, because the stablecoins that we have now created a regulatory framework where the Genius Act are essentially like trading a little treasury bill. You buy $1 stablecoin, the dollar goes into treasuries and you end up trading treasuries. Okay, so what the Iran war means right now is we have signaled to many allies around the world and many institutions around the world, you can't trust the US and you can't trust the US dollar. And that, if anything, should accelerate de-dollarization. Now, because of the crisis and the ramifications to energy and food markets, you're seeing the dollar strengthen because a lot of people are getting out of stocks, they're getting out of risk assets and going into dollars. So the dollar is holding its own. But the U.S. has signaled both on its management. Trump came in promising to lower spending. He hasn't lowered it, he's increased it. So the deficit is worse. And the other things you could do to lower the deficit, like improving the productivity and efficiency of how money is spent, is not gotten better, it's gotten worse. So the re-engineering of government internally, whether it's cutting the deficit or improving performance, has gone the wrong way. And now you're embroiled in foreign wars and proving to allies around the world that you can't protect the sea lanes. So it's a very bad message, and it's likely to increase de-dollarization. What does that mean to the average person? It means inflation.
Yeah, and that's what, when Trump was tasked to break down America, man, okay, these poor decisions, okay, are not coming from Trump, okay? He's just a puppet in office and has to take the blame, okay? Because if Trump was really about America, everything that he's done has been a horrible decision. But he's not. He's about the agenda of the elites, okay? And the elites have thrown this man into this war, have threw America into this war, okay? Because they want to tank the American economy, man. Okay? Because whether America was winning or not, this war was going to have a major impact on the economy. Okay? And there was going to be another avenue that they was going to use to depopulate. Okay? And destroy governments, okay, of the world. You see? But what this devil has started was, all right, he knocked down the domino, okay, of prophecy, man. Because now all these alliances of the Bible are coming together just as the scripture said, which we went over it. We go over it all the time, which is going to end this man's whole empire. So his attempt to do a reset and establish a control system through digital currency, okay, is going to end with America being a complete desert, okay, and these elites going into captivity, man. Okay, so let's go here. Let's fast forward a little more. Okay, think about right. Let's see. But what does that mean for?
How do you give your book the best chance to succeed in 2026? If you've written a book and you're thinking
from
Yeah, so she said from for the average person, this means inflation, and that's what they want. They want, all right, to put stress, okay, on the masses, man, which is going to be which is going to go into civil unrest, okay, which is going to go into famines, okay, and desperation, all right. The elites need the world as desperate as possible. Okay, they want the world in the most desperate state possible when they roll out this global digital system, and it's a lot of nations that's on board fully. Okay, I say India, okay, China, okay, Russia, all right, these African nations, okay, these EU nations, they're all on board. Okay, they're all on board. But what's happening is, as you know, Iran is getting the upper hand on America. Everybody is looking at it from a different perspective now. Okay, now, okay, the seed has been planted. Well, what if we take America off the board? Okay, because these two and a half weeks has showed that America is really useless. Okay, for all the shit that they start, it's not worth it. Okay, for all the shit that America keeps going in the earth, and now when these nations need America to make good on their security guarantees and they can't do it, so it's like this war is useless, man. Okay, so now, all right, you're seeing the seed being planted. The Most High is planting the seed in the minds of these nations. Like, let's take this nigga off the board completely. Okay, and let's continue on in the new world order without the whore. Okay, and that's why Yahweh Shai is going to show up immediately while America's being destroyed. Okay, to break up all these other nations, man. Okay, so let's play a little bit of this and then we'll get some more precept.
DOD. So it's not surprising that DOD would want to authorize and run Operation Warp Speed.
how do you give your book the best chance to succeed in 2020? If you've written
as a way to decrease the population.
So there are two theories. One is the way to decrease the population, which I think is one of them. If you look at what's going on in the war, I think the goal here is, again, to decrease the population. And we need to talk about what's happening with food, because I think, you know, we're focused on energy. We need to talk about food. But the other for DOD is the question is, why did they keep trying with food, with spray, and with the injections to get nanoparticles into our bodies that make us more susceptible to interaction with invisible technology? So what does this have to do with the Internet of Bodies, and what are they trying to get in our bodies? Because clearly they're trying to get, you know, these nanoparticles into our body. And they're very serious about the Internet of Bodies.
And can you tell me what that means?
So we have a wealth of information at the Slayer Report where we interview scientists who are expert at it. And so, Jimmy, I'm an investment banker. I can't describe it, but, you know, so here's what the various scientists we've interviewed say. So Michael Nels from Germany, or we just did Dr. Christian on neurowarfare. What they're saying is we're putting materials into the body that make it easier to control people and use technology to control them. And whether it's lowering cognition or making us more susceptible to interaction with telecommunications.
So that's one of the aims of getting us to ingest all these nanoparticles?
That's the question. So, they've been very clear that they want to be able to get to the point where our bodies interact directly with AI without having to carry a smartphone or look at you through a laptop.
And what's going to be the device that do that? The MOTB. Okay? Because the MOTB, of course, is going to allow you to buy and sell, but beyond that, okay, it's going to link you to this DPI, the digital public infrastructure. Okay, to where these cameras can constantly identify you. Okay, you can constantly be tracked and surveilled. Okay, programmable money. All right, they want you to interact directly with this infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, man. Okay, which gives them, all right, ultimate control in the technocracy, man. Okay, so this devil's, scheme is going to fail, man. Okay, but according to prophecy, he has to try to pull it off. So he's right on schedule. All this work in our favor. Everything that this devil is doing is working in our favor. Nothing is working against us, man. Everything is working in our favor because it's all written. Okay, we understand the script. So that's why. Let's go here. Okay, let's go here. Let's get this in the book of Psalms. All right, you get this in the book of Psalms, chapter 2. Okay, in verse 1, it says, "Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing?" Okay, so we're seeing the heathen, they're raging, they're conspiring. Okay, and everything that they're doing is a vain plan. Okay, it's a vain thing, it's empty. This is an empty idea. All right, what they want to accomplish is empty because it's going to be met with the fury of Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai. Okay, it says, why are the nations so angry? Why do they waste their time with futile plans? Okay, it says, the kings of the earth prepare for battle. The rules plot together against the Lord and against his anointed one. Okay, so they're trying to undermine the kingdom promised to Yahweh Shai and the Israelites, man. Okay, and they want to set up their own thing and have their own thing up and running before Yahweh Shai returns. That's why these devils, the scripture say, knowing he had but a short time. Okay, because now that this war has started, they definitely put more pressure on the devil to go ahead with his move, man. Okay, now that this war, okay, has begun, okay, you got over, 20 nations that's involved. Okay, you got 3 directly involved, Iran, small hats in America, but you have nations in the back offering weapons transfers and, okay, allowing their airspace to be used and, sharing intelligence. Okay, so now that this war is in swing, all right, it puts more pressure on these devils today. They got to go with their move. They got to go with their next move, man. Okay, and that's to bring chaos. Okay, that's to bring the unrest, famines, man. Okay, so they can present this the MOTB as order. It said, "Let us break their chains," they cry, "and free ourselves from the slavery to the Most High." Because in this devil's mind, he's going to undermine the prophecies of the Most High, establish his own thing, okay, where he's God. All right, where he sets all the rules of existence. Okay, and it's like a child with a fantasy, man. And the fact that he's even attempting this, man, okay, Lets you know how crazy and bugged out these Edomites are, man. Okay? Verse 4 says, but the one who rules in heaven laughs, the Lord scoffs at them, man. And the Lord is making mockery of these devils, man. Okay? That's why the Lord has things backfiring, within these devils' agenda. Okay? And the Most High is making mockery of these devils, man. Okay? Because this is a dumb idea. Okay? Verse 5, it says, then in anger he rebukes them, terrifying them with his fierce fury. So the agenda, the plot, okay, of the elites, okay, are going to collide with the fury of the Lord. And the fury of the Lord is going to prevail. It's going to break everything up. Okay? And then what is he going to do? For the Lord declares, I have placed my chosen king on the throne in Jerusalem, on my holy mountain. The Lord is going to insert his government post-World War III. Okay? The Lord is going to insert his government. All right? Not the government of these devils. Okay? Not no technocracy, man. No digital currency, surveillance state. All that's a vain agenda. Okay? That's why when you go here in Revelation 11, it tells you how this war, okay, is going to end. This is the true post-World War III. Okay? All right, this is Revelation 11 and 14. I'm reading NLT. It said the second terror is past, which was the Second World War. But look, the third terror is coming quickly. This third World War. Okay, and we in it. You see? It said, then the seventh angel blew his trumpet, and there was a loud voice shouting in heaven, the world, all right, has now become the kingdom of our Lord. Okay, let's read this in the KJV. I'll read this in the KJV. All right. So this is post-World War III, Revelation 11:15. It says, and the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord. So the kingdoms of this world, of this age, will be translated into our Lord, Yahushua. Okay, and of his anointed, okay, and he shall reign forever and ever. You see, so this is the true post-war, all right, prophecy, man. This is what's going to reign supreme, okay, is the word of the Lord through prophecy, man. And he's going to establish Yahushua as the world power, okay? The first fruit are going to be joint heirs to their world power, Yahushua, man. Okay, and the rest of the men, women, and children of the 1/3, okay, are going to be part of their ruling family of Israel, man. You see, so yeah, I'll leave it there. Got some more to get into. We'll save it, for another day. But Lord will, all right, you brothers, okay, and you sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rakakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessing, salutations, and hopefully, shalom.